Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to July 22nd, 2020. This is the twice a week XDN product update. I'll let Yvonne, our senior architect on the Moovweb XDN, take it away. Yvonne, go ahead.
Thank you, Sean. Hello, everybody. So let's talk about first our XDN packages. We have upgraded the versions from 1.37.1 to 1.43.0. I'm going to go into details on what has been improved and fixed. Improvements and fixes, the first and foremost is the local caching during development. This brings us closer to the parity between your local development environment and the environment as you get it on when you deploy to each XDN platform. You're now able to test the TTL rules that you're adding and the behavior of the site as you will experience it in the XDN. This is especially useful in development if you have especially if you have a slow upstream site. And so Mark will demo this during this meeting in a bit. We have improved Windows support. There are some issues around static HTML pages and the paths that we were using. As you all know, the paths are different in Windows. We have, in other improvements, we have added for prefetching, we have added different ways to actually inform what needs to be prefetched if the prefetching is not done through the standard HTML tag. For that, you can now add selectors and observe other elements. Another development experience improvement is that the XDN deploy will now wait for the closest global pop to be populated with a new version. This avoids a little bit of confusion between when the platform says that something is deployed and when actually it gets globally distributed across dozens of pops that we have around the world. Regarding other fixes, there is an issue with the browser increasing the priority of our prefetches when it goes through the service worker. That has been fixed, so prefetches now have the lowest priorities they should. GetServerSideProps route there was an issue with for index pages that was fixed as well. That's in the next package. And finally, for complex cookies that had multiple parts in the value and the clauses in the cookies, the transformation of those, the writing of those wasn't correctly working. So we fixed that as well.
Yvonne, I just want to jump in here and underscore the importance of that first bullet point. I know we're going to have a demo of it later, but one of the things about the XDN is this idea of bringing the edge into your application and making the edge application aware. Taking the edge and making it work locally is part of making the edge a first-class citizen in your development workflow. That's why this is so important and so useful, as you'll see in the demo. Let's keep going though.
Yes, agree. So, well, I guess I have to go and eat back my words from 2 weeks ago where I said that we are going to be immediately releasing the 2.0. We decided to wait for a little bit and instead of porting back improvements and fixes from 2.0 into 1.x, whatever it is, 1.x, we have continued to improve 1.x, and then we will, once we are happy with, as an example, the caching, local caching improvement was one of the things we added. When we have, when we are in the point where we feel that 1.x is it's really like complete in the sense that we want it to be complete, then we'll release 2.0 and start and have breaking changes into in the router syntax and everything else that's coming in 2.0. All right, so improvements on, I don't want to, so just going back, I don't want to predict anything regarding 2.0 right now, so because I don't want to eat my words again in 2 weeks, so I'll just leave it at that for now. XDN Developer Console, the improvements here, I guess the one thing that we had in the old console that wasn't yet available in the new console was the caching statistic tab that was migrated, and now you can access it in your projects, in your environments. I'm just showing here an example of how that looks. The one improvement on the developer console that we're going to demo in a moment is split testing between the environments. And essentially now you can, before you could split test between different routers, between different destinations that you would write in your project, and then some of these destinations will go to maybe a legacy site or some other site where you wanted to pull in the data from. But we didn't have like an explicit way or an easy way to include other environments of the same site, and now that's possible directly from the user interface without having to write the code around that. Also for the URL for the deployments that are done from repositories, I should say clean repositories. We capture clean, meaning in the sense that there are no changes between what the repository is. There are no outstanding changes. We capture the commit and then we propagate that commit to the XDN console so that you can access your commits directly from. You can access them directly from the build details view. All right, so I'm going to give now control to Mark. I'm going to stop sharing for a while, and then Mark is going to do the local caching demo, and after that I'll do the split testing demo. Mark, if you're ready.
Yeah, I will take control. Okay, let me start by just pointing out that we've updated the documentation around caching, this caching guide on developer.moovweb.com with lots of new content, including some of the things that I'll show you today. So the new feature that we released was the ability to run the XDN locally with caching enabled to simulate the way the edge caches resources. And so you can see the command to do that here. You just do XDN run with --cache, and that turns it on. So for now, it's an opt-in thing. We took we focused on making it so that you can run this all the time if you want. It will clear the cache whenever you change the code of your application, so you won't continually see stale results if you're rapidly iterating on your application. But we're going to let it be opt-in for now. To make sure that the cache is cleared properly before we potentially maybe make it the default behavior. So let me show you how it works. So this is a little app that I've built on Next.js. Let me first run the CLI without caching. So if I run XDN run, it'll boot up. It'll now say running Moovweb XDN in development mode with caching disabled. And what you'll see if I open this URL is it's fairly slow. If I go to one of these blog posts, there's a few second delay. If I refresh, it's not quite instant. You can see there's a somewhat of a delay there. And that's despite the fact that I have a bunch of caching directives set up in my router. The two main pages of this application are the home page, which is this route here, and then the blog post page. So that's this route here. So I have caching set up on both of them, but without the --cache option, it won't do anything. So let me run now with XDN run --cache. So now it'll say in development mode with caching enabled. And then just to make this extra clear, let me go to an incognito window. So now what you should see is, let me refresh here. You'll see that this was actually the second time I hit this index page, because when it first loaded it was the first time. And you'll see a few of the typical XDN headers in the response that show you that a response is being cached. So XDNT, which contains our timing. In development mode, you'll only see one timing component, which is the outer edge cache. So this indicates that the cache was a hit. Also, you can see the XDN caching status is okay. This header, if the response couldn't be cached, will contain the reason why it couldn't be cached, so that can be very helpful. And you might notice as well here, there's a bunch of prefetches that are failing. So the way that the XDN works, in order to decrease the load on the origin servers, is it won't serve prefetch requests unless they're already in the edge cache. So that behavior is replicated locally now as well. So you can see how prefetching ramps up as users organically traverse the site. So for example, if I navigate to this first post, which is this one.json, it'll take a little while. You'll see if I look at the request here, C equals cached. So that means it was written to the cache. So the next user who comes in should be able to get a cached response. And you can see that if I clear my service worker cache here, and then let's go back to the home page. So this would be like a new user coming to the app for the first time. When I land on the home page, you'll notice the home page was really fast. It was a cache hit. And the one prefetch request that didn't fail, because it's already in the edge cache, is one.json. So now if I navigate to that, it's basically instant because it's coming from the service worker cache. So that's a short demo of how caching works locally. I recommend using this whenever you want to figure out whether caching is set up properly. It can also be very useful if the API that you're connecting to is just notoriously slow. This will help you navigate around your app in development much faster. So that's all.
Thank you, Mark. So, all right, let me now go to the, I'm going to start sharing again and go to the split testing demo. So what I'm going to demo is a way to split, to test a feature on that you have in another branch or another environment, and maybe, you know, test it on your production. In this case, I just, you know, I created a test project that has the test environment, and then it has a mobile test environment. These environments will, what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure the test environment in such a way that it sends 100% of non-mobile traffic to its serverless, and then 100% of mobile traffic, not to the mobile test serverless, but to mobile test edge, right? And with all the rules that that implies, right? Which may be very different from this other environment, depending on the way you wrote the router. So I'm going to show.
Jump in here while you've got that slide up to just set some basic context for those less familiar with the XDN. What's happening here is when we say split testing, we're talking about either what a lot of folks talk about as A/B testing, or sometimes just simply, in this case, it's routing by user agent. And what's different from the XDN versus other solutions is this is being done performantly at the edge and in a way that preserves and understands your caching rules. Whereas almost any other A/B testing solution either happens on your origin or happens in client-side code, and in either case impacts your performance negatively and probably interferes with your caching. So we've got lots of customers who do A/B testing, and we found that sometimes you don't know if your A/B test was a failure, didn't show any improvement because the test was invalid, or the hypothesis behind the test wasn't correct, or you actually reduced all your performance back, and that's why you can't see any lift from that A/B test. So that's the context for this feature and what we're trying to do here. Sorry, go ahead, Yvonne.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sean. So going back here, so this is just a test project that I have for this demo. I'm going to show you, I have 3 environments on the edge. I'm going to be focusing on the test and the mobile environment. So the test environment looks like this right now. So while that is being open, so I just recently deployed this one just before this. So it hasn't been, no one has visited it yet. So in this case, I can see that this is how it shows here. This is how it shows in a mobile. If I refresh here with a mobile user agent, this is how it shows. Whereas this here environment, let me go to mobile user agent, looks like this, right? So these are two completely different environments. They have different caches, they have different rules, they have different, obviously they have different serverless and different SSR in the background. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to this environment, which is a test, and I'm going to edit its split testing rules. And I'm going to add a rule that says, for all the phones, right, when device is phone, I want you to send all the traffic to environment called mobile, right, which is the other environment on this project, on this site. So once I add this, I will activate this, which will result in a redeploy. So now these testing rules are, being prepared and compiled and then distributed globally against all the POPs as we have, we already talked about maybe too many times. And so here now, let me wait for this.
While we're waiting for that build, Yvonne, how should people think about caching and their caching rules in this situation? You've got two separate environments which might have two separate pieces of code or might have different sets of caching. Maybe just help think through that.
Well, the great thing about this is that we respect the rules. The rules don't really change in the sense of, so if you go back to this diagram, the rules here for routing and the caching that you have on your mobile environment, these are the same. These rules are still going to be applied if the traffic from this test environment hits the mobile test. So it's the same rules as if I went directly here. When I go directly here, this caching, as you can see, this is already cached. You can see that it's already cached here in the on the edge, right? So I can see that this is cached, and then this same cache will be served when I hit here. Now, once this is deployed, so now I have a new version here, and if I refresh now, see how that fast that was, because it was using actually the cache of this environment. It didn't need to repopulate the environment again. It didn't need to. It respected the caching and the routing rules of this other environment to actually send the entire traffic there.
Yeah,
so,
to make it extra clear. So right now, this URL, throwaway -demo -the date -mobile, go back to the diagram just for a second.
Right.
That is this
one.
Oh, I thought it's the one. Oh, that's that one. I thought it's the lower one.
That's a test one. That's the test one. And this is the mobile one.
Yes,
right?
correct. Okay.
And so now here, if I go to the desktop and refresh, well, now it actually went to serverless, because again, this is just recently deployed, there's no traffic. Now it went to the SSR, and now this is cached here. And this is the actual serverless of that test environment that was executed. Whereas when I go to the mobile and I refresh, what's happened is that I sent all the traffic here to the edge POP, and this serverless here. But this was already cached. I don't know if did I explain that correctly?
Well, yeah, so just to emphasize this, the URL where the first part of the domain ends in -test, that is in your diagram. Yeah, the URL that you're seeing right now on the screen that ends with -test at the first part of the domain. That is the upper path of the diagram, and the lower path is the one that ends in
mobile. Yeah, here it is.
-mobile. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the routing you're switching from mobile to desktop.
Correct.
Okay, we're running low on time. I think. Yeah, thank you. That was a very useful demo. Thank you. Okay, so last but not least, questions. A reminder, you can enter your questions into the chat and I will go through them and read them off. First question coming in is asking about Windows support. Does Windows support require using the Windows Linux subsystem?
No, it does not. So this is a native Windows support. You don't need to use the Linux subsystem.
Okay.
So it's that's what we are, we are working like the issues actually that I have mentioned previously were not issues. If you had used the Linux, subsystem, you wouldn't have seen these issues. These are native Windows issues.
Okay. Next question. How do I figure out why a response isn't being cached?
All right. So this is a great question. We never respond. We include. So let me share for a moment here, and I'll try to make. So in every response that we have on the platform, we include this XDN caching status. In this case, it's saying okay, right? Because this was cached, this was correctly cached. Let me try to maybe provoke it into something else. Provoke, right? So
there's also a doc on this now, Ivan. If you go to the
all right, thank you. All right, so
yeah,
caching.
And then there's a section specifically on that. Yeah, how do I know? Scroll up a little bit. Or maybe
Cookie. Yeah. All right. Give me a second. So here, how to find.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
so
there it goes. All right. Thank you. I didn't know.
Yes, this goes through all the values of the XDN caching status, all the various reasons why a response might not be cached, even if you have a route that is trying to cache it.
Great. So yeah. So Mark is so the documentation here. This is very informative because you can see why, like, if you can never specify the max age, not even here or in the upstream responses, if the code is above 400 or above, if it's private, then how would you force the private caching? If it's a method, header, get, etc. So you can go through these and see why some of your responses are being cached. As in the remark, as we previously mentioned, this is now available to you in your local development. You don't need to deploy to understand why something wasn't cached. We will correctly return this code, this caching status, even in the local development.
And this is sent for production as well as local development?
Yes, this is same for production and local development.
I'm just thinking off the top of my head, getting excited. I can always thought about this in terms of debugging, but maybe we could throw this into the server timing headers and people could extract it out and throw it into ROM data if they want. If you're interested in that, let us know and we can prioritize getting that done.
Absolutely.
That'd be an
Scroll up here a little bit. There's also another useful piece of information. So how do I know if a response was served from the cache? So as I mentioned, there's the XXDNT response header. And in production, there'd be two components that you want to look at, OC and SC for outer cache and then shield cache. Locally, there's just OC because there's no level 2. And there's 3 values you can ever see there. There's pass, which means it was a cache miss and it wasn't cached. There's cache, which means it was a miss, but it was written to the cache so that the next user is going to see it as a hit and then ultimately hit for when the response was served from the cache. So those 2 sections are very important if you're ever wondering why something isn't being cached or if something is being cached. That walks you through everything.
Okay, we only have really less than 2 minutes left. The last question, I don't know, Mark, if you could answer it really quickly, but there's a question that we mentioned earlier, the prefetch priority fix. Could we summarize in 60 seconds just what the issue was there?
Yeah, so with prefetching, you want to make sure that if you're prefetching a lot of content, that those network requests don't get in the way of other network requests, which might be more important, like navigating between pages or loading images. Prefetching can happen on its own time in the background, and browsers can only open so many network connections at once. And so browsers also have this internal concept of priority of different network connections. And there's a way that you can trigger a network connection to be lowest priority, meaning that if a higher priority request starts while the lowest priority request is still active, it just jumps in front of it, which is what you want. So there's some subtle behavior with service workers in browsers where if you're not careful, requests might be high priority even if you want them to be lowest. So there was a bug in our service worker prefetching that was causing those prefetch requests to become high priority and block other requests. That's now fixed.
Yeah, and one interesting note is this resulted in us discovering an issue in Chromium with the service worker behavior that we ended up filing a ticket. I think that ticket number, I'm looking it up, is 1106892. For those who are interested in more details on that. Okay, well, we are right at time. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Mark. And we will be here again in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.